characteristic is bisociation. And what that means is that they tie two things together. They go across thought planes. A person who is linear, who goes straight on a path, will not be nearly as inventive as the person who looks to the side and says, hey, what's over there? Maybe I can connect the two. And it turns out that that's one of the most productive marks of an inventor. Now, the same thing that makes him go like this and go off to the side and come up with new ideas is the thing that drives Jay crazy, because they won't stay to the plan. Okay? But that's part of the characteristic, and so the two fight. You always have this creative streak fighting against the fact that you need to be disciplined to get something to work. So, how do we do that? Well, there are ways around this. And the first thing is that you build crude and simple prototypes. Simple things where you take the guy, you put him in a lab, and you say, just build something, show me, 2 days, you got 2 days, show me how this works. And he'll go through it, and a creative person will look at it and say, you know, that doesn't work, let me try this. And pretty soon he's got something working. Now, if you set that same guy in front of a contractor to take 3 months, he has to sell that contract to somebody in the business world who may or may not believe him. And every time he iterates, he has to resell the project, and the guy says, well, why was it wrong the first time? Now you're asking me to make it again, but now you got to make me fix it. And people get tired of that. And so the inventor runs into this barrier. So the idea is to make prototyping and to make the development of the product itself as quick as possible, so that the inventor himself doesn't get locked on an idea that may not be the best one. And have him pull out his portfolio of 10 or 15 other ideas and go in there and start looking at those other ideas and say, well, maybe I've got a better idea that'll work over here, okay? And so he'll begin to very quickly iterate as quickly as possible. The other thing about that is embracing failure and harnessing chance. Those are things that are very important to an inventor. He has to be able to do that. Yes?
You know, you mentioned a very good point when you just said that you got to go over prototyping very quickly.
Yes.
One of the things that Google does, and if you look at the culture of one of the most successful companies, is that they said that we don't compete against Apple, but we compete against people in garage. What is the biggest problem for someone who wants to do this prototyping in-house? I'll tell you, when I started my company, I had to invest $40,000 just to set up the electronics lab. One of the things Google does is Google provides those labs free of charge to their employee to work in the weekend. And it could be a mechanical lab, could be electrical lab. If you can invest $40,000 for one lab, now you can have 10 inventors sharing that lab in Marietta and using it, you know, versus one guy putting in $40,000.
Thank you. You're a good straight man. I appreciate that. We're going to talk about that. That's exactly one of the ideas we're going to be talking about. The other thing is that you need to have cross-fertilization. And the reason for this is not only because inventors need somebody else to talk to, but also because that way you avoid the mistakes. And you get the chance to kind of freewheel ideas. Inventors generally read everything. They're very prolific readers. And they, let's talk a little bit about what an inventive mind is, as opposed to the reality, what people think of an inventor. Well, the innovator is a loner, right? Well, reality is that he works in teams. Nearly always he works in teams. If you look at the patent base, you'll see that most of the patents have more than one inventor. So that tells you something. And also, they're spread out with several different cities. So these people network. This is something that's characteristic of a, I'll just say, I don't want to say the word successful, but I'd say more prolific inventor. Okay? Oh, let's see, the other one is, gee, the inventor is a brilliant genius. You know, some movies come to mind. The inventor with the hair sticking out because he put his finger in the socket to see what it would do. The most dominant characteristic of an inventor is bulldog determination. He's going to push his idea through no matter what. Now, and by the way, that's where the frustration comes from. How about this? The inventor is highly sophisticated at analyzing things. Well, there are inventors like that. But typically, the inventor has a broad background. he knows a lot about a lot of things, and he can share between fields. That's a much more productive person as far as inventing. How about this? The inventor has the idea, fully forms it, puts it on Jay's desk, and says, Jay, I want to fund this. That doesn't happen. This is what really happens. The inventor goes out in his shop and he builds something, has a germ of an idea, and he puts it together, and it's kind of like duct tape together, right? And he brings it out, and somebody looks at it and says, what is that? Well, that's silly. Well, they castigate it. They just tear him apart. And so he goes back and says, well, I'll see if I can replace the duct tape with something a little more solid. And so he goes through it again and brings it back out. And the person says, are you back again? And then they talk about it. It's a little better this time. And then he goes through that process several times until finally he's got something working, and he's lost 3, 4, maybe 5 friends in the process.